So I want to start with a number, and this is a very significant number, actually. And I hope you will enjoy to know that this is the life expectancy of a hobbit. And this number is evidence of two things. The extraordinary amount of work that Tolkien put into creating the world of Middle-earth, and unfortunately also evidence of the time I have spent on this project and the lack of things that I apparently have to do in my spare time. So, I know you're all thinking the same thing, well, almost the same thing. Why would anyone want to know this? And why would anyone bother to calculate this? And for me, it just happened, really. But everything has a beginning, and this particular project that I've been working on has, in a way, changed my life and how I view creativity, and it has profoundly changed me as a person. Okay, so I should say that for approximately 10 months now, I have been working on a website trying to explore the world of Middle-earth on the web through various projects. And the main project has been a genealogy, which is quite big. I'll get to that later. When I was a child, I used to read a lot of books, and I was much encouraged by my mother to do so. And at one point, she made sure to mention to me that she thought Lord of the Rings was perhaps a little bit too difficult for me to read. And you probably remember something similar from your childhood, and I'm just very happy it wasn't something dangerous she prohibited, but rather reading The Lord of the Rings, because just a few months later, towards the end of 2000, I had finished The Return of the King. So this is Middle-earth, and I developed sort of like a bond to Middle-earth. And I would often drift off in mind. I won't do it today, because I'm on the stage, obviously. But I would often drift off in mind, imagining being on some grand adventure with Aragorn or Gandalf. Sort of like a sidekick. I wasn't the main character. So very modest. Yes, and it became my way of fleeing reality. And I'm sure you also recognize this from your childhood, that you would often flee reality in one way or another, daydreaming, as an example. So I wanted to know more about this world, so I started reading the Silmarillion. And if you have read The Lord of the Rings, you know that Silmarillion is probably... Well, The Lord of the Rings is a bit dry, and it can be considered slightly difficult to read. And I'm the first to admit Tolkien wasn't the best author. Silmarillion is even worse, actually. It's full of characters with really odd names and historical events in masses. So just to keep my head straight around this, I started doodling on a paper. And before I even realized what I had been doing, I had drawn two gigantic pieces of paper, two 1x1 meter papers, with the complete Tolkien genealogy. And this just sort of happened. It wasn't my intent, really, and I don't think my parents were too pleased about it. They probably thought I should be doing something else, studying. But I mean, Tolkien versus studying. You have to have your priorities straight. So, of course, when I had done this, I wanted to share it. And this was not something that what I will show you now is not something I'm particularly proud of. Because in a moment of weakness and utter confusion, I decided to transfer this analog version to Excel. And I mean, I am a chemical engineer, and Excel, it's good with some things, you know, but definitely not genealogies. So this is what I came up with. Isn't this beautiful? Not really. But anyway, so I thought, I was young, stupid, obviously. I wanted to share this, so I sent it to a website, and they apparently rejected it because they probably thought it was ugly, but they also said that there were too many flaws, too many errors, and I was devastated. I was 14 years old, and I was very devastated. So I went on to do other things, probably much to the joy of my parents. So I didn't pick up on this project until I started Chalmers University. And as a student, if you have been a student, you know that you have to have something to be able to flee from the studies. So this became my way of fleeing studying. And I was discussing with a good friend of mine, a newfound friend of mine, Simon, creative projects on the web. And I thought I should tell him this dark secret I had, talking genealogies. So I did, and he thought that's pretty cool. And it kind of ended with him telling me that you should put this on the web. And so I did, and I spent an awful amount of work on a website, which I published in January. And I didn't know anything about programming at the time, but I'm a very experienced Google user, and that can be enough. So we went from this to this, and it's getting larger. So there are 923 characters there, and you probably return to the thought that why would anyone do this? But I'm getting to that. So it just happened to me. And of course, publishing something like this, I didn't expect anything to come out of it, and I certainly didn't expect anyone to really bother even sending me an email about it. But the feedback has been quite tremendous, and that's probably the reason why I'm here today as well. I have received hundreds of emails from people, from teachers who have wanted to use this in their education. I don't know why, but I don't have to, and I won't question it. And a hotel sent a beautiful email. They wanted to put this on a wall in their hotel, and that would be frightening. So I wanted to continue with this project, of course, since it proved to be so successful. And I didn't really know what to do, and during the meantime, there was some media coverage. I received this passion I have for the Lord of the Rings and daydreaming suddenly got mentions in Wired, Time Magazine, The Guardian, and Huffington Post, interestingly enough. They labeled me King Geek. And I have still not... I have still not decided if that's something good or something bad. But Huffington Post, they're probably never going to write about me again, so I can say this. And I'm sure Aftonbladet won't write about me either. So they're quite similar, actually, in terms of... well, I won't get into that. Right. So I wanted to do something more. And I decided that it wouldn't be awesome if I could do sort of like a timeline of the events, because there are quite many, and put this next to a map. And I did, and I came up with this. And it's not something entirely unique, but I've rather made a composition of something, a timeline and a map. And there's a beautiful word for this, which I didn't know until very recently. It's called geospatial timeline. Almost sounds like space, doesn't spell the same, unfortunately. And as you hover over these events, you will see them on the map. And I didn't expect this to be a huge success, but apparently this is something very new. And I started getting emails from web designers and people, well, other people, sorry. I mean, web designers are people. But they're rather curious. So I started getting these emails, and I realized that this is something worth exploring more. So I was inspired to do something for you by Carl at TEDx. He inspired me to extend this thought of the timeline to something more real. I mean, this is a fictional thing. But if you extend this to something, if you imagine something more real, something perhaps more important, because there are things more important than this. If you imagine something that people would be really genuinely interested about, for example, World War II. There's a massive amount of events. This is just a sketch I did, but there's a massive amount of events that are important to how this came to play out. And I think a lot of the patterns in this are lost because just there's such a vast amount of information. And there are patterns in The Lord of the Rings that are lost, but there are also patterns in real events like this. And just, I think, to be able to do this would increase the accessibility of the information for people like me who don't know much but want to know more. And I would also like to end with probably the main thing that I have to say here, and it's about creativity, because this project has proved to be, to me, what as a chemist I call a catalyst for my creativity. It has unlocked some things that I didn't know exist, and it has, in a way, made me find my happiness. I love creating things. And I think this is very typical for the world we live in today, that everything has to do with our career. But we don't always have to make choices that have an impact on our career. This probably won't have a positive effect on my career. I don't know yet, but still. And I want to encourage you to do something just because it's fun, because you're passionate about it, because you want to feel creative. And I encourage you to pursue that geeky project you've been putting up for too long. Thank you.